The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Hermano, Chris, how are you?
Hermano, very well. It's good to see you again.
You too. Welcome back to the Sustainable Voice. This is Ashish, your host, along with resident guest Chris, who's always on the show. Chris, ¿qué tal?
No, it's great to be back.
Absolutely. And we're gonna get controversial this episode. Not that we haven't any other episode, but we're gonna get controversial because this episode we're actually talking about something that's something you and I have experienced, right? But it's something we're gonna break some myths here as well, because people think that we're about to talk about here only happens in poor countries, and that's actually not true. So first of all, today's program is brought to you by the letter W. W for wisdom. I sound like Sesame Street right now. So those of you who know, my late father actually, was creating this, letter or alphabet of emotional intelligence. And we founded the entire alphabet after he had passed away. And so we've been releasing his letters one by one. But each one had meaning to it. So the W for the letter W for the word wisdom. And that's going to be actually really key because what we're talking about today is going to require wisdom. It's going to require courage. It's going to require vision, acceptance, but wisdom more than anything else, right? Free, independent thought. What we're going to be talking about today is organizations that pay to protest and what that looks like, right? They're paying to protest. And I think that's always a problem. And right away, people think, well, yes, that's an issue in Peru. This isn't a Peru thing. This is a global thing. So, Chris, before you jump in, I'm going to read to you, and I don't normally do this, but our protesters, our producers actually do. They did a really good job summarizing this. And I think that I should read this verbatim. This conversation exposes our communities, particularly in developing nations, though not only, are weaponized by political candidates, organizations, and outside interests for their own agendas. From Peru's 2022 protests to documented cases in the UK and the US, we're going to reveal the uncomfortable truth. Manufactured dissent isn't just a poor country problem. Man, they're good. They're good. So for those of you right now who think, no, this is only in poor countries. This does not happen anywhere else in the world. I tell you what, the sand is really deep in the Sahara. You can actually bury your head in that sand again and pretend it's not happening. This isn't one of these episodes where we're going to get people to get politically charged. So if you're on here about to start commenting on politics and whatnot, that's not what this is about. This is about factual cases from Australia to Peru, from the US to England, from Canada to Singapore. People who are paid to protest. It's unofficial, official, whatever the case, but people who are paid to protest. And it's not always the case of people who are weak-minded. It's not always the case of people who are uneducated. So, Chris, you are one of the smartest people I know. So let's actually start with you. Has this ever happened to you where you've been paid to protest?
Honestly, that hasn't happened necessarily straight, directly offered to me, but indirectly, as I belong or used to belong to many guides, tour guide groups and associations, and that they'll tell us all, we're gonna go call absolutely everybody on this class, and the one who is not in the protest, is gotta pay a fine, or you're not gonna pass a course or something like that. So we were not necessarily even motivated. We were just forced to do it without necessarily wanting to become part of it.
Well, and last episode we were talking about land rights and whose land it is, and you were talking about your ancestors being kicked off their land. So when you start talking about that, do you know anybody who's been paid to protest? Do you know people who have been offered money to protest and they've gone ahead and accepted it, whether they're part of a community or people, even an acquaintance of the guy you met at the bar?
It's not necessarily paid, but as we say, forced to do it. Otherwise, there's a penalty. Like people who come from the countryside, people who come from the countryside and they are not given another option but to go. Otherwise, no running water to their property, therefore no irrigation for their lands, or no benefits out of the crops that are just about to be harvested and so on. Participate on the protest, for instance, which is also a way to, just having them make things by the force and not by actual self confidence.
Yeah, yeah. No, look. So those ones who did they go ahead with it? Did they go ahead with the protest, knowing that there was penalties if they didn't?
They had to. They had to
Okay.
because otherwise the penalties wouldn't be affordable for them.
So did they understand what they were protesting, and did they believe in the cause?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I'm pretty sure there's got to be people who are strongly protesting for the rights, but I think it's the vast majority, at least from what I see,
Mm.
that they have no idea, and that's something pretty common that I get to do. Last time there was a protest. Was it about 2 months ago? As you remember, about
Hmm.
the bus running up to Machu Picchu and so on.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I wasn't aware that there was a protest going on before the actual strike. A couple of days before that, I was with a group of travelers, and I saw a lot of people. I wasn't sure they were maybe lining up I don't know, to get lunch for free or something. And so I decided to ask, and one of the ladies said, I said, well, what are you doing? What are you lining for? And she's like, I don't know. They just told us to come and just be, make a big crowd here and make us heard. So it's like, huh. So as we kept moving on to Aguascalientes, this is the town of Machu Picchu, we saw that there was an actual protest again against the government, whom wanted to keep the same company running the buses over 30 years. So it was a right to protest, but not everybody was aware of that. Interesting enough, soon after, as I was just lining up to get on the bus to Machu Picchu, I saw everybody going back home. This was around 2 o'clock, going back home with these big plastic bags full of meals. So that was their prize to be on that protest without even knowing what was the cause, but they were fed a good lunch.
Oh,
But they didn't know what was going on.
how did they? I mean, I could only imagine what they feel afterwards. I had a classmate of mine in Kenya that was actually, again, same thing, offered, and it was penalties, not money, but offered penalties if they didn't protest, become part of a protest. And it was basically to unseat a local minister somewhere in Kenya. And they had to, right? And so this isn't even, and this is interesting because it's not even a race thing, right? It's not if you're a certain particular skin color or race that it's there. He was Indian like me, and he was from a well-to-do family and still was there. And it was penalties associated. And the penalties were with his business. And if he did not protest this, I had a separate case that just me personally, that it's again, same thing. It's been, hey, can you do this or else? I had, for example, in university, we won't mention the university, somebody knows. It was a great experience, but I did have one teaching assistant who had implied that if I'm not part of a particular protest, that it would affect my grade. So that was part of it as well. So this isn't just a one country thing. This is there. Back to the people who you knew that were protesting, those ones who did because of penalty, whether they believed in the cause. As I said, if they believe in the cause, you don't need to be paid to protest. You'll go do it yourself, right? I mean, that's part of it. Who did they think was behind it? The ones who were paid to protest. What was it? Was it a political candidate? Was it an organization? Was it a private corporation? Who did they think? Like the Machu Picchu let's take the Machu Picchu protest, for example. The people who are involved. Who was behind it? Who started it?
The few associations that are the owners, excuse me, of the few buses that takes people up to Machu Picchu have been in charge for over 30 years, and it's a multi-millionaire company.
Mm-hmm.
So the concession has ended. 30 years, good. Now we need someone else that perhaps could offer something better, right? Or if they by right win the next concession, well, good for them, but we still need some improvements. So the agitators, I believe, were part of the ones who doesn't want to leave the money coming, the money making machine. So it's okay, but why do you have to bring so many people to protest to make us believe that there's a bunch of people that actually agrees with this particular company is doing, which I particularly don't agree. I wish we could have a new company, but I'm not there protesting. We'll let hopefully the government do the right thing, but that's a completely different story. But
we talked
yeah,
we talked about that in a previous episode.
yes, I think it's the ones that are basically don't want to let the money go out of their pockets.
Yeah, and
So
look,
agitators.
and we have a record number of listeners, right? So and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But all the listener base is growing. Think about this for a second. When you're listening to Cris, it's money in their pockets. Think about all the lobbying that occurs in our country, whether it's insurance lobbyists, whether it is lobbyists for special interests, whatever the case. You hear that tossed around all over. It's a wonder we get anything done, right? Because there's always somebody who's involved, some sort of special interest, some sort of agenda that's always at play. And look, that's a part of life, right? There's no way around that. That is a part of life. But being able to actually decipher what's really happening, because, what you see in the news, and I'm not, again, this is not one of these, this channel leans this way, that channel, forget about all that. What you see in the news isn't necessarily what's happening. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. There is a president of a particular country, unnamed country, unnamed president. This has happened. It's a hypothetical situation, but it has actually happened. This president is accused of a rigged election and wins by overwhelming majority, right? So you've got multiple countries this has happened. And when this president is questioned as to why they were actually able to bring protesters in, why they were actually able to bring to help with their cause, to say that it was unfair and that they were rightful winners, why protesters were supporting and whatnot. They were talking about the lifespan, that if they had free and fair elections, that they wouldn't win. If they didn't win, their families were going to be hurt or worse. Now, cross that again. Now I'm going to actually name a specific country. President of XYZ country, leadership, whatever the case, has people who are voting for him, supporting him, going out there saying that he is the best thing since sliced bread, when we all know that that's not the case. Can you, and those, they're all out there in droves, right? And it's not necessarily money changing hands, but it's do this or else. And there's documented cases of it happening here, documented cases, because again, somebody we know was actually involved with this. It was one of these people who were out support. And it was one of these cases where this particular leader, and it may not be the president, but this particular leader was basically saying, well, come out and vote for me, come out and support and show you're voting for me. Say the country needs me. And if you don't get me, then the alternative is much worse. You know who that president was? Nicolas
Sounds very
Maduro.
familiar.
From
Well,
Venezuela. See? You roll your eyes. And that's exactly when we talk about that this is not a Peru thing. How does a guy like him have supporters? Protest doesn't just mean against something, could be also mean for something, and being paid to be on that side of it as well. And I think that's part of it. Tell us about the 2022 protests. What exactly was happening? What led up to it, and what was happening? And I want to preface it because you and I actually talked to a vegetable seller in the Sacred Valley who was actually she admitted to both of us that she was paid to protest. And then when we explained to her, what about tourism? She said, I don't care about tourism. I sell vegetables. And we explained to her, well, who buys your vegetables if there's no tourism? All of a sudden, a light went off. So you and I have experiences, but let's just recap this, right? We talked about the fact that protest is not just on one side or the other, but let's just use Peru as an example right now. What was the actual cause of those protests?
Many things. I think, we've been ruled by the right for many years, and I guess Peruvians in general are tired and are ready to have a big change. Therefore, the left was seen as a possible solution. So for a few years, we already had some whom didn't quite succeed in the matter. But in 2021, we elected a gentleman whom represented the extreme left, whom didn't want to say it out loud, but it was clear the case. And a year and a half later, although he's going on trial still as we speak, and he's in jail ever since, he tried to make a coup. This is December 7th, I believe, of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was cooking a grill with my brother-in-law back home, and he asked me, "Are you listening to the news?" So I just pick up a couple of minutes, and I said, "Oh, we're done. Just grab me a beer, shut it down." I was off my mind. I was so worried what we're gonna do. And then same day at 5 p.m., that president was taken to jail by the military because they said the Constitution does not allow you to do it. Ever since he's been in jail. When I heard that, I was like, whew. Anyway, that was just the beginning. The vice president had to take the power, whom became the very first lady president ever, right? Dina Boluarte, whom before she left the power, and she was recently impeached 2 months ago. She had
you and I were together.
Exactly, right? She had 1% of popularity at that moment.
I thought it was 9.
Anyway, no. Check it out. He or the people who once supported, the original president back then, Mr. Pedro Castillo, didn't like the fact that she remained on the power. They thought, if he's going down, we all are stepping aside and we're going to try to call out for new elections and so on, but didn't like the fact that the lady who represented them took the power. And actually, she did the right thing. She's a vice president. She had to represent and take over. But nobody liked her. So there were protests going on all over, not only in Lima, but especially in the south, in the south, the high plateaus of Peru in the southeast, known for being, quite rebellious. And I like that because that also comes from our ancestors. But what are you really protesting for? And why in such way? Sadly, I believe over half a dozen of people died as a result of the protest. And the vice president was being called Dina Asesina. Dina is her name, the killer. And I remember seeing big on the mountains, carved in Dina Asesina. I was like, whoa. Anyway, that scared absolutely every single traveler coming to Peru, and it was worse times than COVID because all of a sudden, we're all aiming for the same goal. We're finally getting better after these 2 years here without business at all. And then he had to do that. So no travelers whatsoever, protests here and there. They were blocking. I mean, I live only a couple of blocks down the street from the airport here in Cusco, right? So I remember big crowds and agitators trying to take down the wall of the airport in front of my house. I'm looking at the runway of the airport in front of me right here. And so you could hear, forget about going out to the streets just because you're out there. They will tell you, you're not, you're against us. You should be out here with us. So just because you want to be safe at home, you were called as you're not with them. So I guess it was part of, and now everybody's saying we don't need the right, but we all hope that you've also learned and figured that the left, extreme left, is neither the solution. So I'm very, very interested and worried what's going to happen in a few months.
You said something when this was happening, because you and I were together in 2020 in Peru, right as this was coming to a head. We were together early 2023 with my family, and you were there. And you had said something to me that I've heard before from other countries. You have said to me that people were brought in to protest. People were brought in. They were bussed in, or tell me about that. What does that mean?
I remember for some reason I had to be in the town square of Cusco for some reason. I mean, we were free to walk around, but there were no cars or protests. They were blocking off the streets and so on, but I had to make it. I mean, my life continues, right? And I remember just hearing so many crowds. I'm telling you, hundreds, if not thousands of people in the distance in the downtown historic center of Cusco. And eventually I see these huge flags and they're running like crazy. It was safe, they were protesting, but I'm like, where are these people coming from? I could tell that they come from rural areas of, far away from the cities. I'm like, but what are they asking for? It is a right to protest, but are they really aware what are they doing and what damage is causing for not only them, their families, but absolutely everybody else in the country? Later on, because hermano, we take travelers up to these rural areas, and I had the chance to ask them because I was able to recognize them by the outfits. And I said, I know where these guys come from. So I asked them, hey, did you participate in that? And they were all sad faces. Yes, we had to because, as I said, we had no other option. And we had to bring this and the other. We were not even fed. They told us we were going to be brought there on a bus, but we were left out there. So we had to find our own way to come back, say, from Lima, not only to Cusco, but then back up to the mountains for hours of a ride on the dirt road. It's like, really? It was all over the news, hermano. So if anyone that is listening that is selling, what is this guy doing? Well, it's all over the news. It's all written in papers. So why? Why would they do that? All of these agitators, and then taking advantage of the, I guess, naivety of some of my people in the rural areas, and they were being pushed like, hey, if you don't go, no water for your crops, and so that will ruin the whole production. That will hurt their economy for the entire year. So that's big time, So yes, people were brought from all over, from all over.
Well, so who benefited? What was the goal? I think, there's a phrase that I've heard in all sorts of leadership courses, and some of my mentors talked about that. Everybody wants change. Not everybody knows the change they want. Right? Everybody wants change, but not many people actually know what that change is supposed to look like. So What was the goal? What were they hoping to achieve?
They were trying to have the vice president who just took the power get impeached so they could call out for new elections as soon as possible, although it was only 2 hours after we got our new elections and our new president. So I guess they wanted things to be done the right way, as they said. They wanted to have a new constitution, like out of nowhere, a complete new constitution. I'm not necessarily saying that the one that we had that is from the year 1993 is the best one, but from my personal perspective, I think it only needs some adjustments here and there to the time that we're living, to the situation and the current times that we're going through.
Yeah, it's a living
You don't
document.
need a whole modification. You don't need to start it out from scratch. It's been already written. And as a matter of fact, it's been proven that it has worked really well as of now. So there were plenty of things that they wanted to achieve, but I think one of the main goals is to make themselves notice and agitate people, trying to tell them, Peruvians have the right, we are the owners, all of the money should come straight to us. We don't need foreigners to invest in our country and take all of the earnings. It all should come to Peru. It sounds very nice, but are we really capable to do it?
Right, exactly.
So there's plenty of things. I really wish I could be right in the center. But again, I don't know if it's a matter of education. I don't know if they don't see it. Or am I wrong? Or I just don't see it. I'm just trying to understand what's happening around.
Well,
I think it's
okay.
just a common sense.
What did your parents think of this? I mean, they have seen obviously Peru transform from before the time of Fujimori, before all of that. They were seeing this. What did they think of all of this?
I am the youngest out of four, hermano. You know that. And I luckily have not only my parents, but my older brothers who
Hmm.
remind me how it was back in the dark years of the country, back in the late 1980s, when we were taken over by two large terrorist groups, the Shining Path and the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Movement. As a matter of fact, just a little propaganda. There's a movie that just came out about the one of the most, if not the most, successful project of rescuing alive from terrorists that happened here in Peru. It's called the Chavindo One that operate.
Yeah. This is on Amazon, actually.
Check it out. Actually, in the next couple of hours, we're gonna go with Gavi to watch it on the movie theater. Again, Fujimori, this president, controversial president, happened to be on the power when that happened. I'm not necessarily giving all of the credit to him, but a lot of people are saying, why isn't he mentioned in the movie anyway? But check it out if you have the chance. I think that will give you also an idea what's been going on in the country with these terrorist groups. So going back, my parents, my brothers always update me and refresh my memory because I was just a kid back then, how terrible it was those times. And then going through this time, it's been, yes, a roller coaster, but somewhat our economy and our way of living was safe. I remember growing up in the 90s here in Cusco, it was the greatest of times until 10, 15 years ago, it was the safest. It's only the past 5, 6 years that I don't know. It's just out of control and it's becoming worse and worse.
So here's a question, because this actually applies here. Is it a generational gap? Is it young people that don't have elders telling them? And I'll tell you why I say this, right? So in one particular country I've been to, there is there's a huge age gap, right? A generational gap. The population in this particular city for between the ages of 31 and 52 almost don't exist, because a lot of them were killed off during a mass genocide. So you have people who are younger than 31 and people that are older than 52. The ones who are younger don't know enough about it, or nobody told them. The ones over 52 don't want to talk about it. So in this particular case, is there a generational gap between the elders who've seen how bad it was and the younger ones who don't know what that looks like? And does that affect who protests? Is it more young people that are joining these protests, or is it all age groups?
The very, very last big protest that happened in Lima when Dina, the vice president, was impeached or was just about to be impeached, and this new 30-year-old president of Congress took the power, and he's our president, Mr. Heri. It was the Generation Zeta, la Generación Zeta, the ones who took over the streets of Lima, and kids at the age of, I don't know, 18, 20, and they were all masked. They were all, very like warriors, fighting for the country. I don't want to say what they know, but I think they're just pushed by the how do I say, by the but just by the heart, and not necessarily by historical facts and actual facts. That do you think really this is the what we need right now? We were just not ready. I was honestly hoping for just Dina keeping the power. I said, yeah, it's 1% of popularity, but do we need an extra? Do we need the seventh president in
In
6 years,
6 years,
hermano?
yeah, or versus elections are just coming up in a few months. Yeah.
Exactly. And hopefully he will hopefully make it, right? Because we still have 5 months before the election. So I
Yeah.
hope these guys still make it until there anything can happen. That's why I was saying Peru, the country where everything is possible.
Yeah, and this is why I asked that question, because here in the States, if you look at, first of all, before I talk about here, there are Gen Z protests in Morocco, in Madagascar, in parts of Asia, in parts of Europe, in France, in Kenya, in the US. There are Gen Z protests everywhere. And it's partly is this notion of the system doesn't work for me, so burn the whole thing down. Partly it is what that leadership exchange talks about, that they want change, but they don't know what that change should look like, right? And because they're not old enough to remember what bad times really look like, they're not quite young enough to be able to told what they should think about. So they become this generation, as you said, warrior. I know everything. Get out of the way. I'm going to take over everything from my mother's basement. Living from there. But I think that's part of it, is this notion that they're the ones that seem to show up, because that's the one thing that happens in all these countries, is that the general population of protests, I shouldn't say the general, but the majority of protesters are younger. That's there.
Yes, and it happened in Chile 5, 6 years ago. Remember, I think 2021. I remember seeing all of these videos and pictures. I'd taken over, I believe it was in their main town square of Santiago de Chile. It was all youngsters. And I really like the fact that they were fighting for the right, but wow, it was impressive to see how young the population was. But then that leads me to think, what are we fighting for? Why are we even risking our lives itself to believe in what that guy tells me, that that guy or lady really have the solution? Is what he's proposing and promising as the moon really the change that we need?
Right.
Whatever happens, they get on the power, at least here in Peru, and they just, they forget about what has said.
Well, and we should talk about the global picture as well, right? Because the global picture is there. I mean, because what's clear is we don't quite know who benefits from it, besides people who get their pockets lined. There's no clear picture on who benefits from it. The idea of why they protest, it's okay, well, we're going to do it because, which again, we're going to rewrite the Constitution. Like their ask is unreasonable. Again, if you're dealing with, I mean, there's protest and there's revolution. There's two completely different things, right? And I literally was having a conversation with my son just yesterday. Shiv had come home from college. We were talking and we were talking about, and he was talking, he's part of the leadership, at his university. And we were talking specifically about revolution versus protest, and saying that revolution doesn't mean violence. Revolution can be intellectual. Revolution can be done with books, with intellect, with precedent, with knowledge, and done the right way. But you have to know what you want. So he was talking about this coding class, and he said that he's doing this coding class for this high, and it's really really in depth coding, and he says the output is the most important thing. You can fix the code, you can write the code, fix the code, but if you don't know what the output is, what code are you writing? So that becomes part of it. So let's shift over to the global picture. Let's shift over to that, because this isn't just a Peru thing, as you mentioned, right? So we've had now protests in parts of Africa and Tanzania and Madagascar. What are protests in France? There are documented cases of the protests happening in France, of actually some of these are paid actors that are coming into this is France. In UK, here, prime example, we talk about this. I'm gonna talk to you about this protest, or not even a protest, but a campaign that happened in the UK, that everybody was basically sold a bill of goods that says this is why we're doing this. And right now the UK is actually starting to backtrack and say maybe this wasn't the right idea. Do you know what it is? Brexit.
What is it?
Brexit. Brexit. I have family in UK. You know, a lot of people in UK, and they're starting to now look backwards. Like maybe we should create separate agreements. Maybe we should do this and that. And if you take a look, there are so many cases. Anybody who just look it up yourself for yourselves. Don't take my word for it or Chris's word for it. Look it up for yourselves. But during that campaign for breakfast, there are several, more than several documented cases of paid actors who were out campaigning for Brexit. They did not understand what the financial outcome or benefit of Brexit was going to be. They did not understand what the ramifications were going to be, and they didn't know why they were doing it, but they were still paid actors. Again, may not have been money, maybe other means, but it was still it was a curated action, right? It was a desired outcome, but not their outcome. And now with some of those people, they're all over. They're now saying, if I had, and there's the phrase, if I had known what I knew then, I wouldn't have voted for Brexit. But you did know. You just didn't choose to believe it for whatever reason, right? There's a million different reasons. So that's in the UK. Look at what's happening in the US. We talk about gerrymandering, gerrymandering with the redistricting of states to be able to move voters. It's the same thing that's happening in Peru. You're basically moving people. You're bussing in people to protest, bussing in people to vote. Here, we're gerrymandering. And again, I'm not taking political sides. Anybody who's about to take shots, we're redrawing district lines. So we're not bussing people in. We're simply moving the line. What's the difference? So before we start talking about this is a Peru thing or this is a poor country thing, it's not. I just rattled off 3, 4 separate developed nations that have a similar issue. It doesn't make anyone better than the other. It just, this starts with us saying that this happens everywhere, not that this doesn't happen here. This can't happen here. Chris, why do some people assume this only happens in developing nations, in poor countries? Why do some people only think it happens there? Why do they think that their backyard is pristine? Any thoughts? And if you don't answer, I'm going to turn your water off as well. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, no. Honestly, I'm not sure. And I honestly did believe that it was the case also, that it was a matter of education in developing or third world countries. But it apparently is not. Every time I get a conversation with a traveler that comes from North America and expose them what's going on, they tell me, Chris, don't feel bad because it's happening, the country where I come from, whether it's North America, Central America, or Europe. And in a way that makes me feel good because I thought it was as I said, a Peruvian, a Hispanic thing or a third world country thing. It's not.
Nope.
Now, why do people believe it's only happening with us? I don't know. That's an interesting question. Because it's all over the news everywhere. It's on the newspapers and it's on TVs. It's everywhere. Whether it's happening in France or in Chile or in Peru or in Tanzania, it's everywhere. So I'm not sure, but I can definitely tell you that it's not a matter of education. It's what I
No,
thought first, but it's not
it's not.
education.
Okay, tell me more. What do you mean?
Chris, that's exactly what I thought. When all of these protests were happening, I was convinced that hopefully younger generations were gonna bring the real change. But no, as a matter of fact, during these protests, people that I know that are very well successful in their own matters, in their own fields, were truly stronger believers of the protest, and they were with it. So I cannot say that people who don't know how to read and write were the ones supporting this.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's
And that's the
not.
same.
It's definitely not education.
No, and that's the same thing in other places. I mean, some of the protesters that were, or the actors, I shouldn't say protest, some of the paid actors that were part of Brexit. I know 3 of them, just me. 2 of them are college professors. One of them has a
Wow.
PhD. So, I mean, there's that part of it. So I think one of the protesters is trying to grab your phone right now. They're trying to take your phone as well.
Yes, yes, yes. No, but I took it away from them.
Yeah, good. Perfect. Well, okay. So this is an interesting, let's stay on this a little bit. Okay. How does, when a paid actor or when a protester or an actor that is paid or in some way incentivized to behave in unnatural, it's not organic, in terms of how it occurs. How does the world see it? How does the manipulation of somebody's will and thoughts to favor somebody else's agenda in an unfair manner? How does the world see it? And not
I
just
think that
Peru. I mean, I'll answer for what I can see for some countries, but for Peru, what do you think? How does the world see Peru?
I'm not sure. I think you'll have to help me answer that because I see it from the inside, and I don't even necessarily believe that the locals truly believe that's what's happening. They don't want to accept it.
Hmm.
They want to believe that it's really the people that are protesting for their own right and for the good thing. But it cannot be the case, at least in most of the cases. I'm not saying every other protest is a nonsense thing, no, but the fact that people are agitated and brought from rural areas and so on, people won't necessarily believe that they are coming here or brought forced, not by their own will. You can ask many people here and they will
Yeah.
debate big time to me, but I actually had and met people who had said that to me, and many people believe the same thing. So locals don't see that is a real thing.
So
I'll put it
I
that way.
have
I don't know how.
no, I have sat in the room with three separate ministers, people in positions of power in three different parts of the world in different meetings. And I've asked that question before, right? How are you helping the optics of your country? And one of them said something I'll never forget. One of them said, it solidifies what my population thinks. Well, what does that mean? We see the world as poor countries and rich countries, and this solidifies their conclusion that look what's happening in those poor countries, at least it's not happening here. And when stuff like this happens in France, it happens in the US, it happens in the UK, it turns the entire mechanism on its head. And when we had the election here in 2020, the presidential election here, forget about the candidates again, I'm not getting political. The amount of people that just poured into the streets all over. You saw it in the news. You saw it all
Mhm,
over. The amount of people that poured into the
mhm.
streets, celebrating or protesting, whatever side they're on. It was like they had forgotten that they live in a developed nation. For that split moment, they thought they were living in a developing nation. I remember when the January 6th events happened, right? So again at the Capitol building, and again, there's going to be people who are going to protest, go, you're feeding into the politics. Forget about the legitimacy of the event. That's a separate thing altogether. That's above my pay grade. But when we start talking about that, I got calls from classmates in Kenya going, that sort of stuff happens where we live. How's it happening over there? We're used to that. We expect
How
that
does that
happening here.
feel?
How does that happening there? It's supposed to happen here. So to back to what these ministers said. So one of them said that. The second minister, when I asked about the optics of a country that has paid actors, second minister said, well, isn't that what they're supposed to do? That was his answer. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? The third minister, I had four separate ministers, and I won't name the countries, but the third minister I thought had the best answer. Third minister, when I asked him, how does it damage the optics? His answer was, depends whose eyes. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you keep talking about the optics. Whose optics? It depends on who's watching. That was the right answer. That was the right answer. Who is watching? If you are putting on a show, meaning if you are paying protesters, if you are incentivizing them to behave in an unnatural form, if you're manipulating a protest, who are you doing it for? The question, in my eyes, based on listening to him, is not what's the desired outcome. It's what do you want people to see? That's what they said to me. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. That makes me open my eyes. But it also leads me to what I was already realizing that is happening. It all depends of who's protesting and what are you looking for and what are the benefits that you're going to obtain to it. So as I
Yeah,
said, there are the protests, but there are also the people who protest from home,
right.
and they have a completely different way of thinking, and they're supporting the protesters by protesting from home. And there's plenty of things being said among all of us. But as you said, I think it depends from whose eye and whose interpretation you had it to understand what's going on. That actually makes total sense.
I had a chief of staff for a developing nation. I won't say where, but a chief of staff of a developing nation that actually sat down with me and their country was in the news for a rigged election, rigged presidential election. I think it was a municipal election. It wasn't presidential. It was a local county election, and it was in the news, in the local news, for a rigged election the country news, the local news there. And so I knew him from school, and so we sat down, and I said, "You brought all these people in. They're saying it's a rigged election." He goes, "Who's they?" I said, "Well, look at the news. The country is saying a rigged election." So he said something to me. He goes, "That's what I wanted you to see, is a rigged election. If we had actually carried out full, fair elections, my candidate would have lost. And because my candidate is a minority in this particular part of the country, he would have been assassinated within the first 5 minutes, or first 5 months, or whatever it is, because he lost election. And by the people he lost election to. This was not just about seat of power. This was about protecting the country from them. The only way I could get you to see that, get you to understand, is to make my candidate the bad guy, to make him the bad guy, to basically say, yes, he rigged the election without telling you. It's the only way I could do it, because if he tried doing it, and he was, jailing his opponents and whatnot, putting them in prison, they were disappearing. He said, if I let them actually have free and fair elections, he would have lost. The people that were coming in, it's not a matter of winning or losing. Yes, he would have lost, right? And maybe he was supposed to lose, but the problem is not him losing. The problem is what would have happened to his family after he lost. And this was, a very poor country where this was happening. This was a small section of it. So the optics, again, are keys. So this brings me to one of our final points, which is the boy who cried wolf, right? You know that story, right? You cry wolf enough times, at some point, people will stop believing you. What damage does this do to legitimate protests? People who are organically out there, and they are protesting with clear hearts, clear minds, for the right reason, for a just cause. They're not just protesting for the sake of protesting. They're doing it because there is a wrong that has happened that they believe very strongly should be righted. What damage does it do to them and their efforts?
Cry wolf. Well, we have a in Spanish, el que le insiste la consigue, right? So, which means the more you try, the more you keep on going, you're actually going to succeed with it.
Mm.
Don't stop doing what you believe it is. It is a good cause. I don't know. You don't see that much anymore. Often in the streets, I mean, protesters claiming that the good thing for all of us. At the end, as you said, it depends on the perspective of who's watching them,
Right.
whether it's the good thing or not.
Right.
Could be the good for me, but the wrong thing for the others. But yeah, I also feel nowadays that with the insecurity of the country and so on, that a lot of people don't even want to go out there and express themselves because they could be punished at their work. Their salaries can be even hurt by that, or even extortions and so on behind it. So it's getting to a very, very difficult point, at least here in Peru.
Yeah.
The same way it's been going in many other countries. I don't know how many people are listening to us.
A lot. I just got the stats yesterday, by the way. You want to know a fun fact? So across
What is it?
7 different platforms, counting YouTube, we're being listened to right now in 60 different countries.
Wow.
I just saw the stats today. This podcast has grown so fast. Every
Wow, that's
single
great.
month, we are increasing our downloads by 20, 25, 30%. So we're clearly hitting a nerve. But today, the stat that jumped out was that we are being listened to in 60 different countries. And that's
Wow,
just on
that's
the platform.
amazing.
So people are listening to this. And you know what? People are listening to this in countries where this happens, right? And as you said, it's basically where these protests, I think this is the right idea. If you truly believe in something, if you truly believe that something needs to change, then no matter what, you have to go fight for it, no matter what, right? If it's the right thing. This does make your job harder, but what's the phrase? Cream rises to the top, right? So if I think that's the saying. If your protest is a just one, and a protest again does not mean violence. It never means violence. It's intellectual. But if your point is a just point, it is a sound point, then nothing should get in the way. But it does. These illegitimate protests, these paid actors, they make the job 10 times harder for
Yeah.
those who mean well, right? What you think about politicians. I remember you and I met a politician when I came to Peru in 2018, right? It was in a funeral at a cemetery. Do you
At the
remember?
cemetery, that's right.
Yes, and he was running for mayor of Cusco, and I think unfortunately, something terrible happened to him, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes, and I believe He became the mayor, I believe. But I mean, he was just involved with so much corruption
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
which didn't surprise me at the end. So I wasn't necessarily the proudest at the end to have you say hi to him, you know.
yeah. No, but you know what? And that actually, that right there is a solid, is something that I wanted to say. That's why I asked it, is that if we are so focused on agendas and are letting ourselves be, as duped is the wrong word, but letting ourselves just see what's in the news and take it at face value that it's this, and not see that it's paid protesters, it's paid this. If we're not able to see through all that murkiness, how do we hold a higher standard for our leaders? How do we hold a higher standard for who comes into power, who we elect as leaders? If we can't see through those illegitimate protests, those paid actors, the ones with personal agendas. And again, I'm not talking about the ones doing the protesting. They're under duress. I'm talking about the ones who are pushing their agenda. If we don't see that, and I had this conversation with a friend and we talked about revolution. And we said revolution always gets associated with violence. Revolution can be intellectual. What is the phrase? The pen is mightier than the sword. It always has been, it always will be, and it still is. It still is right now. The pen is always mightier than the sword. And we talk about, the platform we're on right now, we talk about the assault of social media on our senses, the fact that our attention span has gotten shorter. This platform that is eating away at our senses is the platform that we can use to be able to disseminate information. Why do you think when Tanzania had their election protest last week, or as of this recording, they shut down all social media? They shut down all digital communications because they knew this is their weakness. This is the weakness. This platform, revolution is intellectual. Revolution is about the pen being mightier than the sword and putting everything that we have learned. So the what we said at the very beginning, and I think Chris, you would agree, where this starts is we have to question everything, whether or not it's true. Question it for ourselves. Form your own opinion. We said this earlier about this whole podcast, right? The sustainable voice is not about trying to get any of our listeners to convince them to see one thing or another. It is about bringing about big successes in small places. It is about showcasing people who are not in center stage. More importantly, and equally important rather, it is about asking you to form your own opinion, asking you to interpret this the way you want to, form your own opinion, but form it with conviction. Stand behind it and form it with conviction, not one that can be changed so quickly. And I would say that people who, if we have enough conviction, then when we are asked to protest, we'll ask more questions. Nobody can put duress on you if you don't allow duress to be put on you, right? And that's part of it. So anything you want to add to that?
Nada, hermano. I think when was it? A few months ago when we found out that we're going to be having 43 different political parties
Well, yeah,
to
that's right.
elect from our next president next, I felt the moral and civil urge to make a summarized version myself of every single political party candidate, people behind, now that we're finally getting to know who the representative of these political parties are going to be, and simply make it viral on social media, whatever, so people can actually read a small summarized version of who they are, and not necessarily supporting the one side or the other. Completely neutral, because there's nothing to hide. All of the information is out there, so you can prove it. I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating. But for people to at least know and have, as you said, that is a good point. I really liked it, to form your own opinion, and then from there you go and have the conviction to support the one or the other, or at the end none of them, because they
Right,
don't deserve it. So
right.
perhaps we can get a majority and truly overcome with true political parties that we like, for instance, here in Peru and all around the world, I believe. So I felt that that urge of my civil
Duty.
thing to duty, is thank you, to the support to provide to my community, and I'm in the work. So hopefully that helped a little bit.
I would love to see that.
And also to myself, because I still need to get educated by so many different candidates and so on that I probably don't even know it's happening. So
If you can actually put that together, How about we share that for you when we post the recording of this episode? We post it with it.
Hermano, I'm more than happy to, but allow me a few days. I'm actually
Yeah.
off the next few days, so I'm gonna work really hard on it.
All
But
right.
believe me, I really want to do it for my country, for my people.
So okay. So a few things in closing. What do you want people to understand when they see footage on TV of protests happening, whether it's in Peru or somewhere else? What do you want them to understand?
Hopefully to see by themselves, by their own judgment, from their own education, what's happening, whether it's the right thing or wrong thing to protest, to really know what's going on, and from there act properly and have your family act properly.
So, and I'll add to that as somebody who has inadvertently been part of a hostage negotiation, lean in. I'm not saying go grab a machete and go be part of the protest, but lean in. Don't be afraid of it. Lean in. Ask questions. Don't run. Running away, if you go hide in the sand, the protest still happens. The bad stuff still happens, whether you're there or not. So lean in. What about travelers? Travelers, journalists, citizens, people, how do they tell the difference between real movements and manufactured ones? What are some things that you would, if there's one thing you tell them, like, hey, look at this. What's one thing, what piece of advice you can give them? You know, for somebody
To
foreign coming
travelers,
to, yeah, travelers, what's one thing you would tell them that if they read something about protests, you know, oh my gosh, there's protesting happening there. What's one thing you would tell them to tell the difference between something that's real, a movement, and a manufactured act or
that
act?
first of all, as we have said many times already during this episode, is that it happens all over the world. So it doesn't necessarily happen to a country like ours simply because we are a developing country. So they can easily compare it with what's going on in their own country, whether it's a first world country or not. And that, the world is going through all of these issues pretty much at the same time everywhere, especially in South America or Hispanic America. So we have our own issues, and it's no matter what, a country, Peru at least, where we want things to be done correctly, and despite all of the issues and roller coaster of emotions that we're going through, we're really happy and eager to have you all despite all of the issues that we have, and hopefully we're going to get to an end and we're going to succeed.
Well, and I would say that tourism actually is the biggest driver. You know, countries actually will react quicker. For example, in parts of Africa, constitutions were put in place, court rulings were put in place quicker just because these countries understand, a lot of these countries, Peru included, understand how important tourism is. Peru, it's a bit different because only one sector of the country understands different from the other sector. One sector relies more than the other. But in other parts of the world, whether it's Costa Rica, whether it's Kenya or Egypt, whatever the case, Egypt is probably the best example. Like they learned their lesson the hard way from the revolution to today. And they have sworn to themselves that they will never let that happen again. Anybody, and even right now, you see the commercials for the new Grand Egyptian Museum. It starts off, "We are Egyptians, not Arabs." It's not a knock on being Arab, but the fact, since day one, they've always said, "We are Egyptians. We're not Arabs. We're Egyptians." There's a difference. And it's not trying to pick on one versus the other. Please don't take us that. Anybody right now who says, "Oh, you're a racist because you said that." My mom's from Sudan. Remember that. So let's think about this, okay? But I think you've said it really well, that the fact that they need to be able to remember what they represent. We've talked about the number of jobs that come from tourism. The more that we can make the right type of tourism, responsible tourism, the more we can make that prevalent in an economy, the more that is tied into indigenous communities. There are studies that have shown that the more stable, and there's one particular study that shows, that one that I adopt to, that when responsible tourism can approach 10% of a country's GDP in total, that all of a sudden there is a link to stability. If there is any kind of unrest, it ends quickly. It ends as quickly as possible, right? There is a resolution, but it's not, the government doesn't shut down for 43 days, and there's a resolution that comes into place. So, okay, this is something that I would say for all listeners. The next time you see a protest in the news, the next time you see something happening, two things I asked you. One, I want you to first stop and don't say, "Oh, well, that's because it's XYZ country. It's a poor country. That's why it's happening there." Because it's that. Remember what's happening in your own backyard, wherever you live. Remember, this happens in your own backyard. It's not limited to poor countries. It is happening all over the world. The second thing that I would say is ask questions. Why is this happening? Who organized it? Who benefits from it? And who's funding it? Then show up. Who's paying for it? Don't
Absolutely.
assume you know the full story, right? I think that last one is probably very important, right? Who's paying for it? That's probably the most important question. Would you say?
Absolutely. And you know that out of the, what is it, 15 presidents that we had in the past 35 years or so, the majority of them went to jail because of all of the benefits of the funds of how their election, how do you say, publicity for the election campaigns were paid. I mean, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of soles. And many of the presidents that are now running for the next elections are still on trial for those things. So it's a very important question to think. That's why I urge the Merle, right, to put it together so people can know who's behind
I love it.
the big screen.
I love it. Well, and I'm going to close with this, everybody. If you like what you heard here, make sure you subscribe. Hit that like button, hit that bell button, subscribe wherever you're listening. Start following, just start listening in and think for yourself. Ask those questions. Cris, thank you for your time. Thank you. This was incredible. As always, hermano, we love having you on the podcast. My producers say you're a better host than me, which I think they're right. So I just thank you for being on here. Thank you for your knowledge, your time, your friendship, and just for sharing your amazing, amazing knowledge on this.
Thank you, man. I think you close out with great things to always question and don't necessarily take it for granted. They said, oh, that only happens here. And if it happens there, oh, it's because of this and the other. Don't necessarily assume. Let's get the knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? So let's work on that.
Well said. Well said. Till next time. See you later, hermano.
Till next time, hermano. Rock and roll.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. Would love to hear from you. See you next time.